Welcome back to the third and final part of the life of Prince Rogers Nelson. This one is called Prince, the Imperfect Liberator. Prince was an innately talented musical genius who could play almost any instrument and often played all the instruments on his songs and could produce his own music from start to finish. And then there were the elaborate theatrical presentations on stage. Prince was an entire mind-blowing experience. He was nominated for 76 awards and won 30. I remember as a child in Jamaica, I was maybe 7 or 8, going to my first and only movie with my mother, who I think is not a cinema person. And the movie was Purple Rain. Yep, above my age level. I think the movie was more for her than for me, but it planted a seed. So I'm going to talk about Prince, the imperfect emancipator. Imperfect because we all are. No one is an emancipator every single day of their lives. Sometimes we fail. Prince's biographer said, quote, "The whole thrust of Prince's art can be understood in terms of a desire to escape the social identities thrust upon him by the simple virtue of his being small, black, and male." Prince attempted to lift himself out of every kind of prison, whether it is social convention. He was brash and bold. Quote, he was 16 or 17 years old when anyone came into the studio while he was singing. He wanted me to turn the light off because he didn't want anybody to look at him. My wife came in while he was singing Soft and Wet, and he was a little embarrassed. He got over that shyness, that's for sure. I won't read the lyrics of Soft and Wet here, but please feel free to read it on your own. But he got bolder. When criticized about his stage clothing by the recording label, quote, "You're wearing these spandex pants with no underwear. It's obscene." When Bob left, Prince got that look on his face. He said, "Bob wanted me to wear underwear, so I'll wear underwear." So he went out in his underwear, period. Nothing but underwear. His friends said Prince was bothered about his height, but he was never a prisoner to it. Quote, he was exploring house music. He had this girl, Kat, a rapper. She was kind of loud. One day she walks in and blurts out, "Man, you guys are the same size." I'm 5'4", and Prince is really self-conscious about his height. Well, for a whole week, it was just short jokes. Sheena Easton was coming in to sing a duet with Prince, and she wanted to sing in the studio, not in the control room, which she always did, sitting down in front of a console with a microphone. So I go out and set up the microphone, and he says over the speakers, "Chuck, you'd better lower that microphone. She's really short. She's your size." I came in the control room, and he's looking busy trying not to laugh. He was bothered by his height, but to many of us, me included, the way he carried himself made him one of the sexiest men ever. He also refused to be confined by gender norms. He presented himself and even had a symbol representing his gender fluidity of recognizing both his maleness and femaleness. Gender must never be confused with sex or sexual orientation, but I won't go into that. There were these moments he had when you see him clearly doing the hyper-masculine male things. For example, David Z said, "I was mixing the soundtrack at a soundstage in Los Angeles. I pulled up with 2 huge tapes under my arms, and I see Prince talking to somebody. 'David, do you know Michael Jackson?' Prince said. In the soundstage, there was a ping pong table. They come in with their bodyguards. Prince says, 'You want to play ping pong?' Michael says, 'I don't know how to play, but I'll try.' The whole crew stops working to watch them play. Pretty soon, Prince says to Michael, 'You want me to slam it?' Michael drops his paddle and holds his hand up in front of his face so the ball won't hit him. Needless to say, the game is over. Michael walks out with his bodyguard, And Prince starts strutting around like a rooster. Did you see that? He played like Helen Keller. So that's him, hypermasculine. But we'll see another side of him, and we often saw another side of him, dressed in his feather lace, makeup, hair done. Prince was, quote, Prince was in the midst of doing the family record. He was really driven and his mood started getting more serious. He didn't have a lot of time for fun, except he would go outside and play basketball in the high heels, which he's now paying for, I'm sure. With his high heels on, he could run faster than me, and I was wearing tennis shoes, end quote. He also refused to be classified or pigeonholed as a black artist while loving black people. Quote, he feared too much involvement from others would regulate his music to an R&B audience instead of the crossover to white audience he sought. He informed Hasney, I gotta do my own album. Maurice White is not producing. You go tell the chairman of Warner Brothers that I'm producing. Prince also confronted Warner Brothers executive Lenny Waronker, saying, don't make me black. My idols are all over the place. Waronker was taken aback but resolved they shouldn't mess around with this guy. So yes, this is not a rejection of his black identity, but a rejection of what is black music. Black music is any music. We're doing any music we want to do, how we want to do it, right? It was very clear that he loved black people. Tom Tucker, studio director, said, quote, Stevie Wonder came to Paisley one day to overdub Sounds of Blackness. He wanted a choir on one of his songs. Stevie sat in the studio playing and Prince came in. That was a pretty magical moment. Another fun time would be whenever George Benson was there making an album. I wasn't used to seeing people just walk up to Prince, grab him and hug him, but George could do that. Prince was a big fan. He was respectful towards the other artists, and he became really tight with the guys like Miles Davis and Lenny Kravitz. When Prince was around them, they'd all be very down to earth. And it was just like regular guys working together. So there's that beautiful moment of being with other black men and just having a good time. And he's well known for his emancipation, his self-emancipation from the music industry. And I would argue that it is his blackness that empowered him to do it. Quote, record contracts, this is Prince talking, record contracts are just like, I'm going to say the word slavery. Prince said this to NPR. During a lawsuit against Warner Brothers in 1993, Prince famously wrote the word slave on his face in protest against the major label. Prince became the target. Later, he would change his name and he became, quote, the target of talk show hosts' jokes when on his 35th birthday in June 93, he announced he was changing his name to an unpronounceable glyph. That's the gender fluid symbol I talked about. Prince in Vibe magazine 1994 said, I follow the advice of my spirit. I'm not the son of Nell. I don't know who that is. Nell's son, and that's my last name. I would wake up nights thinking, who am I? What am I? A good question to ask all of us. Then we have Prince in the Star Tribune interview in 1999. I allowed him to have the final say. As strange as that may sound, look at it this way. Malcolm X thinks differently than Malcolm Little. And Malcolm Little is, of course, Malcolm X's birth name. So, yeah, he's showing us there that, yeah, he's not usually a very out and proud, sounds like a radical black person, but there you see his thought process. When you go Malcolm, you're going positive black identity full on. Tom Tucker, up until then, he seemed talking about his emancipation from the label. Up until then, he seemed really happy with the label. I mean, when Diamonds and Pearls came out, he played on the roof of Warner Brothers and building and was very proud of the relationship. I think it stung all the more because of all that. He genuinely was hurt. He didn't know that he didn't own his own stuff. It was just a lack of communication with his managers and lawyers. Whether they didn't tell him or he didn't want to know, he felt like his songs were his children and someone took his children from him. He really changed then. At that point, he took control. He started signing the checks, literally. And Prince also tried to empower other black people into seeing things that way. Anita Baker, I love her, said, Bob Krasnow, head of Elektra Records, and I once flew into Minneapolis to talk to Prince about producing an album. I got to Paisley Park, his production park, and he basically dismissed the chairman of my company and took me on a tour of the complex. He talked to me about things that at the time I didn't understand. When he showed me the vault, he talked about the ownership of masters. Yeah, how to control the money, how to not be a slave to the music industry, because he was still Prince, whose history started in slavery, who had a revolutionary Auntie Mitty. His people were always fighting. So the fight may change how it looks, but the fight is always there. So I suggest you listening to some of his music and experiencing his liberating spirit. And thank you so much for listening to me.